Hi, this is Scott at Chief Architect. In this video segment, we're going to take a look at ceiling options for a master bedroom. The room begins with a simple flat ceiling. I'm going to go through and show you how to create a ceiling with soffits that are layered and stacked on one another. This is the ray trace render view of that. And then I'm going to show you how to create a soffit that has a concentric layered approach to it. When you use 3D design software, it's nice to be able to show options. And in this case, we've found a photo that has a layered soffit option, and I want to be able to use this as the inspiration to create and transform the room from a flat ceiling and provide some texture and interest in the ceiling. The next photo for the inspiration is a concentric photo, and again, using the software to help the client visualize will help maybe sell the job and make the client happy. Let's go into the software and take a look at how to create these two different ceilings. I've opened up the plan, and you can see that I already have the room laid out, windows, furniture, and it looks nice. The flat ceiling is the basis that we're going to start from, and I'm going to come against this wall over here on the left and place a couple of soffits. And I'm just going to press Shift F6 on the keyboard and split my screen here a little bit. And using the soffit tool, just come in and place a soffit, and I'm going to stretch that from end to end on the room. Now this soffit, if you take a look at the properties of it, is slightly below the ceiling. We're working with a 108-inch 9-foot ceiling. My height of the soffit is 6 inches. It's 24 inches deep. And the floor to top is 103.5. It's about 4 or 5 inches below the base of that ceiling, and that will allow us to stick next soffit above that. Let me close that. With the first soffit positioned, I'm going to select the soffit, use the copy tool in the lower left hand menu, and then I'm just going to reflect that around the center of the room and place it on the other side. Place one more soffit against each wall, and again we'll just stretch that end to end and then use the copy tool and reflect that around the center of the room. Now you'll notice when I did that, the lights adjusted down from the ceiling into the soffit. The next soffit that I'm going to place is actually in the center of the room below the ceiling fan. So I'll just place a soffit in the middle of the room, and I'm going to set the dimensions here. To begin with, let's set that at 8 feet, and then I'm going to take this dimension off to the side, and I'm going to use that at 48 inches. And once I have it, I'm just going to use the center tool and center it in the room both directions. Get the visual indicator. Now sometimes you'll notice that my soffit, which is at the same elevation as the outer soffit that we placed against the walls, sometimes the electrical won't update until you rebuild the model. There's also a shortcut on your keyboard, F12, and it will move the electrical down. Now both of these soffits are approximately 4 1/8 inch below the ceiling, so there's a gap there, and that's where I'm going to stick the next layered soffit in here. Here's the rendering of it, and these soffits that are going in there are about 8 inches. I also have one above the ceiling fan that's about a foot smaller than the outer soffit. Let's go ahead and place those soffits. Place the layered soffit. Notice if I move the soffit over the top of the other one near the wall, my cursor outline disappears because I already have a soffit there. So I'm just going to come out and click and place that soffit out here in the room. If I select the soffit and change the specifications of it, let's change the width of it to be 8 inches. Set the height to be 4 1/8. Notice that I still haven't pressed the tab key. The floor to top is 103 for the default soffit. And now that I've changed the height of this soffit, that will adjust when I press the tab key. I'm going to use that 103.5 for the floor to bottom setting. That way it will set it right at the bottom of the other soffit. Select OK. Once that's positioned, I'm going to go ahead and use set as default. That way my future soffits that I place will have that same attribute as far as the width and the floor to top. Once I've set that, I'm going to go ahead and pull that soffit to each of the walls, and then I will run a dimension for that soffit so that I can get it positioned exactly where I want it. Notice that I'm using the NKBA annotations, and when I select the manual dimension tool, it will then dimension in inches. So we'll just slide our dimension across here, and let's pull that up. Previously I'd centered the middle soffit right in the middle of the room, And my room is not quite square, so I'm going to select the soffit and I'm going to set this dimension to be 22.5 inches. Use the move command and then position that. In the 3D view, I'm going to use the material eyedropper, pick that up and paint that brown. And then over here in the plan view, use the copy and reflect around the center of the room here and place the other layered soffit. And I'm just going to create one more copy of that, and then I'll just place it over here and then rotate that soffit. And then again, just stretch it end to end since the room wasn't quite square. Pull that to the other end, and then I'm going to use the dimension tool so I can get the same dimension over here. Pull that off to the side, and in the case of this soffit, we're going to set that at 31 1/8. Press enter and use the copy and reflect about and place the other soffit. You can kind of see the 3D view what we have created so far, and the only other soffit that I need to place is right above the ceiling fan. I'm going to inset that and make it a foot smaller. So again, I'll just use the soffit tool. Actually, what I'm going to do is just copy this soffit in place. I'll open up that copied soffit, and again, to make it a foot smaller, make it 86 by 36. And again, I'm going to use the 103.5 for the floor to bottom setting and change the height of it finally to 4 1/8. Select OK. And then in the 3D view, I'll just pick up the material eyedropper off of the dark brown and apply that. A little bit difficult to see that one. Now in the 3D view, you can see the impact of having those layered soffits, and it adds quite a bit more character to the ceiling. If you look at the Stark room without furniture and no ceiling treatment, it's added. If I go into the vector view here, you can see that it's changed quite a bit. This is a ray trace view. And again, these views you can create using the camera different filters here. One of the ones that I like to use is technical illustration, and it kind of takes away the different textures and colors. The view that I had up previously is called the vector view, and then when you go into the standard view, there is a ray trace option, and that will take probably a couple hours to create, and it will kind of go through, if you want to launch the assisted, go through the indoor high quality and set that. We have a pretty good video on that if you want to search for ray tracing. Now the next ceiling style that we're going to create in the master bedroom, this is the photo for the inspiration, the concentric type ceiling. And here's the ray trace version that I've created in the program. Let me show you the steps in creating this ceiling style and also how I did the lighting in between the soffits here. To create the concentric ceiling, I'm just going to select the inner layer soffits and delete them. And for the room, I'm going to raise that up 44 inches. In the ceiling panel, we'll just type in plus 44. Select OK. Probably want to update the text as well. And then the two soffits on the interior, I'm going to use the transform replicate and raise that up Z value plus 44. That will raise those up. In the photo, you can see the concentric ceiling. There is a gap in between each one of the soffits in there. We'll use that gap, that same amount of about 6 inches, and then we'll stick a light source in there. To create those concentric soffits, you could use a soffit tool exactly the same way as I created the outer soffit around the room. But there's a faster way, and using the polyline solid allows me to create that pretty quickly. I'm just going to come in here and snap room edge to room edge and place that soffit. And sometimes to select it, you have to press the tab key. We'll open that soffit up, and I'm going to mark the thickness of it the same as the soffit at 6 inches. And the soffit floor to bottom was 103.5, and if I use that value, I can raise that up 6 inches, and that will give me 109.5. Select OK. You'll see that in the 3D view. While that polyline solid is selected in the plan view, I'm going to use the copy and place tool in the lower section of the menu. Press the C on the keyboard for concentric resize and pull that right to the edge of the soffits. While that's selected, double click on it to open it up. I'm going to mark that it's a hole and open that up as if it was a surrounding soffit. There's a little bit easier view that we can take a look at. To modify this, let's go in and use the overhead camera here. I find editing in this case better in an overhead view. I'm going to use the material eyedropper, pick up the color off of the soffit and apply it to the polyline solid. Now for this polyline solid, we're going to create 3 more copies of this and then concentrically resize it towards the center of the room. To make that easy, inside the preferences, I'm going to change my edit capability to the default of concentric and I'm going to set that to be 18 inches. Select the polyline solid and get the corner of that hole, and now I'm just going to slide that in 18 inches. You might be able to see a little bit what I've done here using the glasshouse camera resize of it. Let me change that back to the standard view here. So I'm just going to repeat this process. Select the polyline solid, use the copy in place in the lower left hand menu. While it's still selected, open it up, plus 12 inches, raises it up, select the corner, pull it in, and then one more time, make sure you have the polyline selected, copy in place, open it up, plus 12 inches, come in here, resize 18 inches, switch back to the floor camera, and now you can see the concentrically resized soffits that we created using polyline solids. And as I orbit my camera around here, you can see the way that looks. In my final ray trace view, notice that I have a nice blue light that I've stuck up into the soffits in between each one. I used a light source, and you'll find that under 3D lighting, add lights. And if I just come in here and place a light, let's go ahead and take a look at the settings that I did. So first of all, on the location, that soffit was 103.5, and I'm going to set the light source at the exact same elevation. It's going to embed it slightly into that soffit, and I'm okay with that because on the light data, I'm going to set my light diameter to 2 inches, and that will pop out that light about 1 inch above it because I only want a little bit of light coming out of it. The light source that I'm using is a point light, and I'm going to change the intensity down to a very small amount, 3%, which is the lowest number that you can actually use to get light out of it. So using intensity amount of 3%, and then for the color, I'm going to choose a blue color here. And now that I have that light at the right location, I'm just going to slide it back near the wall above that soffit. And in using the multiple copy here, I'm going to set the copy of that about every 12 inches. So let's just go in and set that to 12 inches, and we'll just create a copy of those lights. And let's just go ahead and copy that again every 12 inches. Pull that down and slide that down. A little bit of busy work to create the rest of the lights. I'm going to turn on the layer for the concentric ceiling components, grab one of these and create a copy of it, and open it up, take the location data, plus 12 inches using the multiple copy tool, and we'll just slide those multiple copies in here. And again, one more time, multiple copy. And then I'll just do the exact same thing for the rest of these. Skip. So I finished placing all of the light sources, and each one of the layers as it goes around, I actually colorized it a little bit so I can easily edit them. I also colorized the different polyline solids for the soffits, and then if you go back into the 3D view, you don't necessarily see them because they're only going to show up when I ray trace them. And then the effect in the ray trace comes out looking like this, and by putting the blue light on it, it creates a little bit more interesting view. I ray trace the same scene with a white light, and you can see the difference and kind of make the choice for yourself. But you can colorize those lights to create different scenes and atmospheres that you want. Well, that wraps up the video on the ceiling options for the master bedroom. I hope you found it interesting. Again, kind of recap, we went through from the flat ceiling, created a layered approach using the soffit tool, and then removed those inner layers for a concentric ceiling, and I used the polyline solid. If you're not already a Chief Architect customer, you can download a copy of Chief Architect from chiefarchitect.com, the free trial version, and follow along.